Go live. Go live. Look at us live. Hey, everybody. Hey, Vanessa.
Hey, Tanya.
It's like such a treat. I've already been talking to you for about a half an hour. We wanted to make sure we get the tech right because hey, and there can be some like tricky bits there. Holy doodle.
Yeah. Yes.
And thank you, everybody, who for your patience. We were to have this conversation last week, but the tech demons were not allowing that to happen. But I'm so glad that you're here now. This is In the Spotlight Live with Tanya Geisler, and it is my absolute joy and privilege to get to spend this time every week talking to people that I think are doing incredibly remarkable things in their vocation, in their lives, who have really stepped into their starring role, have stepped into the spotlight, and are continuing to do so. And so being here with my pal, Vanessa Mentor, is deeply meaningful to me. Thank you for being here, Vanessa.
Thank you, Tanya, for inviting me.
Yeah, of course.
Yay, finally.
Yahoo! Haley, thank you. You're going to take the show notes. Awesome. Hey, Lori, good to see you, darling. So if you're watching us from Facebook, if you've got questions, you're going to have to come on over to Crowdcast. That's where we're actually going to see your questions. We've got a little chat going on over here, and we have questions and answers places. And also, if you're watching on Crowdcast, please go ahead and share. And I'm going to just do a teeny bit of housekeeping first. I am going to be, it's as much as I just said, I love doing this show. I love it so much. I'm actually going to be taking a bit of a hiatus after today's show for a couple of months. So do be sure to follow me on Crowdcast so you find out when I'm coming back, including when I'm hosting my masterclass on unshakable confidence on November the 30th, which I'm really excited about. But Vanessa, what a way for me to round out this season of episodes with you, and we get to talk about our bodies and the imposter complex and just how rad I think that you actually are. So, honey, here's, you talk about, okay, so first of all, Vanessa is a story catalyst. She is the creator of Unrestrained Body, which is a virtual program that I'm involved in, and it's a gorgeous offering. And she's a deeply wise, deeply learned guide, and somebody that I've had just the absolute joy of watching really unfold and come into her own over the last year. Though I think you've always been in your own, which is a weird thing to say, but that's just how I feel. I remember the very first conversation. I'll say this. I remember the very first conversation you and maybe it was a year and a half ago, something like that.
Yeah, it happened in August, actually.
Was it?
I think of last year.
Yeah, and I actually don't even remember how we connected or what the purpose was, but I just...
Because I was doing a summit, and then I wanted to invite you to speak to my summit.
Oh,
yeah.
Right. And it's so funny. I don't even remember talking about the summit and that conversation because I just remember being like, tell me all about you. And I mean, the fact that your name is Mentor just like killed me. And I was like, so what are you? You're like, well, I'm all of these things. I'm like, I think you're a mentor, honey. I think that's what you are. So anyway, that is what indeed I see you doing on the daily, is mentoring people, helping them to find their stories, uncover their stories. But I'm much more interested to hear how you would characterize what you do in the world. Tell us about you.
Okay, so I like to say that I'm a mom because I'm a mom. And so, yeah, that was also a catalyst moment for me when I became a mom. And then even though I think since I always left clues, in my life that now, have led to this point where I am. So when I kind of go back and now I see myself doing Unrestrained Body, I said, oh, I didn't know I wanted to do Unrestrained Body. So, or this desire, this thing I had inside and that I wanted to let blossom. It would express itself that way. But when I go back, I was always that kind of person who would question everything, who would say why, and also who would try to understand, why the human body or the human mind is acting the way it is. Because I had a dad, I didn't have that, nurturing relationship with my dad. Even though he was with me, I was raised with him. But the person that he was, because he didn't have that, he didn't receive that, so he didn't know how to establish this connection. So for me, my dad was weird. And this is where I've always been questioning myself. Why is he that way? So that's why I wanted to do study psychology, because I wanted to really understand my dad. And then so it was always that questioning of, okay, why we do the things we do, and how some people could be very spoken and down, and and some other people were closed off, and we could not connect with other people. So really understanding what was going on in the unconscious, subconscious. So I think that's why I'm doing this work. It's really to help people come to that understanding of who they are and why they're here, and that they have that, all the answers inside. This, I believe, hugely. And that's why myself, this being this guide, I don't think I know better than you, and I don't think I know yourself better than you know yourself. What I believe in is you came with your answers, you came with your love, the love that you are, and then we just forget because of the way, the different structures are put in place. And then so we just forget and we buried those things inside. And now my role, because I forgot for some time also, and then it's to help, other people find this thing.
Beautiful. So you said so much in there that I find very interesting. One is that it's like, as you describe your work, you talked about your own, you saw the clues that you'd been leaving for yourself. And as you described that, it made me think of it sort of a treasure map. And then you talk about that in terms of what, I don't know if you've used those words before, but it does sound like that's what you do, is to help people to go back and find those clues for their own treasure map. And I've seen you do this, and that's the story catalyst piece of your work. And I got lots of questions for you about the imposter complex, but I want to just name what I find really fascinating that I've not actually seen in this light, is how your story catalyst work can feel very head-based, and then you butt that up against the unrestrained body, which is very, it is about embodiment, and it is also about the stories. And I think that's a really interesting convergence that you bring in your work, because one of the things you and I were talking about right before, well, actually, let me just pause there and say, like, is that something that you've been conscious of, that the stories are up the head, but then the wisdom of the body? Is that something that you've been consciously integrating, bringing together, or is that two separate parts of the way you see things?
Well, I think they meet somewhere. I was not always aware, where that intersection was. But one thing to speak to the story catalyst is, I've always loved stories, and because, stories, words, they are affirmation of our life. They are testimony, of who we are and the way that we experience our own lives. And because also I'm very sensitive to stories, and I very sensitive to people remembering and telling their stories, because we usually, the big stories are the one that are usually being told. And, ordinary people like you, Tanya, or my dad, my grandma, so they have so much to say because they have lived. And I feel like I don't need a big stage, I don't need a book, but I still can be a witness of my own story and then pass it on, because I believe in legacy. This is what I believe in. And legacy is not only the financial piece, but in the tradition values. I'm passing on to my daughter. I hope and that she's gonna continue, so our lineage still speak and still be remembered in our own way, own settings. So, and also because we're telling ourselves all kinds of stories, we're sitting in people's stories, we're making them our own, and at some point, there's that things get tangled, and this is where we the our head, we become confused of what is really going on with me personally, or is it somebody else's stories I'm picking on or making my own. And because also of the story piece, this is what my dad, the way he lived his relationship with his mom or with his own dad who was absent. This is kind of the story, because he was not aware, he was not telling that story, because that story stayed in his head. He was in deep pain and hurt, but he never shared this story with me or with my mom or with my brother. I would guess. Okay, and because of that, the story stayed in his head, and he was not able to write a new song with us, so to break the cycle. And this is where the piece of how do you listen to your body, how do you listen what's inside of you, because when you don't tell the story also, it's like it gets stuck in your body. And so now there's that confusion or affirmation. This is who I am, based on the way the story was told or was not told to you, and now you're starting to leave from a place of this is not really what I want, or this is not really who I am. And for me, so that's why the work, when I was going through the academy, and then so for me this one was as a story catalyst. How do I help people, uncover their own stories, be okay to tell their stories, so now they can decide, what other kind of story I want to tell, and always make that distinction of what's my own and what
so
is
great.
not mine.
Yeah, so Vanessa was a part of the Star and Roll Academy, and I did not mention that at the very top because I don't know why, but I didn't. It was so delightful to have you there. So here's, I have so I heard you say that there's discernment needed. Which one's my story and which one's not mine? And here's a question that I think I know the answer to, but are all stories worth sharing? So here you talk about the pain of your dad having these unexpressed stories, and it makes me think of, I can't remember who said it, but unexpressed creativity is not benign. And I should find out who said that, because I want to attribute unexpressed creativity is not benign. If you know who that is, then pop that in the chat. Brene Brown. I think it's Brene Brown. Are all stories worth sharing is my question to you.
Well, I think all stories are worth sharing with yourself. It's how do I let whatever I know, I've been living, I've been experienced, I can be witness of it, can become the observer, the listener of that story. So it needs to be said out loud for yourself or on your journal. This is definitely, I believe that. But I don't think every story is worth sharing with publicly with the world. And this is where, for me, there's being vulnerable and being intimate with people.
Vulnerable versus, yeah, okay.
Yeah. You can be vulnerable, intimate, and I think vulnerability is a way for me to connect with somebody, to let you know how I am understanding what you're going through, or I can help you see, allow you to get in my world, but I don't need to be intimate with everybody. So there are some stories that are only worth sharing with the people, for example, that are really very close to you, really help you. If it's a story that you want to untangle, or if it's a story that you want to celebrate more, there are certain people that you would share that story with. But I don't think you need to share your story with everybody.
Fantastic. You know what, Vanessa, I really appreciate that. I think there's a lot of talk about all things need to be shared. And I think it's really helpful to be thinking about that lens from vulnerability as a means of connection and intimacy as really like an accessibility. So we really need to be clear on, once again, those, well, I say once again, but I guess I feel like I'm always thinking you're talking about boundaries. So, like who's within, in Randy Buckley's work, who's sort of within the garden of your boundaries. So that's really helpful to think about the vulnerability versus the intimacy piece. So, you know that everything I see is through the lens of the imposter complex. So one of the things that I think about, in that question is my story worth sharing? I think it's really helpful to be thinking about the purpose of the sharing, right? Is it for connection, or is it for accessing? Is it for accessibility? One of the things, though, that people really come up against is, and I actually heard you say it off camera before we were talking about when we are compelled to share what it is that we know and believe truly and deeply, particularly if this is on the sort of Gulf Stream of what is in the collective. So you're talking a lot about embodiment right now. So the piece for you is, I know what it is that I'm here to talk about, and then it becomes this, but how does what I'm saying rise above such that people are able to understand and absorb and really get it. And that's where, for me, the imposter complex shows up, and that's line number 4. I have nothing useful or original or whatever to say. And you named something really brilliantly, which was, this is where we really want to, when we try to think about how what we're saying can be heard, that's where we get really into our heads. Yeah? So what's a better way?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the better way is to, drop into your body, because there's wisdom there. And I think I said that, I shared a post, and where I said that, I believe, not 100%, but I do believe that in past lives, because there are things that I'm experiencing. I feel like those are not the things that I've lived in this life. So that's why I kind of believe in past lives. And I do believe that the different bodies we carry through, our different lives, either it's in this lifetime when I was a baby, a child, a teenager, or adult, or either it's the different bodies I carry through, different past lives. All those experiences, I kind of are imprinted in me. And So there are all those lessons that you went through, and then you have that are in you, stuck somewhere. And then now, when you create the stillness, and this is why I believe that we need to, in our busy lives, to really take time. We need to be intentional. I don't care about how busy you are or how you think you don't have time actually, but if you're someone who really wants to walk into life, into the richness of life, and who want to create and see for yourself the things and not always have to refer to somebody else to know what you need to know, you need to take the time to create that stillness in you, and then to let the answer and the wisdom to come out of you, because they are in there. And that's why I said I believe that we came here on earth with everything that we already need to know, so we can right now, navigate through those waters. And then the body, and we're not taught, so we are taught to actually, be afraid of our body, to not listen, because we need to be it's always need to be logic, or we need to open a book
the psych
to
major.
find the answers.
Says
we need to go to the research to back up whatever. Exactly. So, and in fact, because when I come from that country, and like 90% or maybe 80% or 70% of people, they don't know how to read. They don't know. And when I'm looking at my grandmother, she didn't know how to read. But this woman, she was a business person. She never went to school. She was a business person, and she had so much wisdom in her. Why? Because she was so in touch with her own experiences of life and her own body. She was aware. She was not caught up, and she trusted that she knew what she needed to do in order to go.
So do you think that we've become less in touch with our bodies as some sort of, like, how did this happen? How did we stop being in touch with our bodies, do you think? You've spent a lot of time thinking about this.
Well, for me, I think it's colonization, because, I come from a country that was colonized. And I think first it comes from that. And, because the thing is, when somebody, you're no longer in your land, and then you have to come to a different land and then adapt to what the master wants you to do, you're not in your body. You have to think survival. People are telling you what to do. So you don't have time to be within yourself, with yourself. And then, the patriarchy, capitalism, the way the economical structure, the way that our school, church, we are people, I believe that we, the big structure, government, your church, they want you to abide to the rules. They want the world to work a certain way. And by, laying down the rules for you, telling you what is normal and what is not normal, then you have so much, the programming is so ingrained in you, you cannot be with yourself. You cannot touch yourself to actually be inside of yourself, to listen. And when I say listen, we don't have to ask questions. This is the other thing, because some people, it's like, I need to ask questions. It's like when you're saying a prayer, I need to, talk to God and always talk. But in your talking, you're not leaving space to also hear what everyone wants to hear. Because sometimes when we ask questions, it's not always the right questions, and it's also ego based, and it's also based on what somebody else wants or what the world wants, and so we're not letting the soul and the body, all of the experiences that we got inside of us, tell us, okay, right now this is where you need to go. And because most of the time it's never where we want to go or we would like to go.
Ooh, you don't mess around. Amazing. Thank you. Hey, so I promised we were going to talk about the imposter complex as it relates to our stories about our body. What do you have to say about that? Because you got things to say about that.
Yeah, so what I want to say is that I want to relate first to lie number 1 of the imposter complex. You know, like your self-doubt is proof of your inadequacy. So there's so much focus on, you know, the way we look, because there's, you know, lots of money people are making on, you know, our look. And then at some point we believe strongly that our physical appearance is who we are. And so my worth, it resides, you know, in my shape or my size mostly. And then if I'm not that size that the world says I should be, then I'm not adequate to do whatever I want to do. I cannot present myself to the world the way I am. So there's something for me to I need to change my body size before I can. You know, I cannot go out without my makeup. I can't. And I'm not deserving of, and in my case, if I'm taking my own story, where I believed that, you know, I needed to present myself physically a certain way so men could be attracted to me. So I didn't think like Vanessa, the way she came to the world, that a man would feel attracted to her. No, there's something about me that needed to change. And then when we got caught up in that lie, then we stopped ourselves from doing the very things that we actually need to do, or we just silence ourselves, or we just, you know, we stay small because we're not deserving, and, you know, we would not allow ourselves to just blossom the way we are. Because if you need to blossom, you need to look a certain way before you could.
Emotional, I have to say. That really, I think you've absolutely nailed it. I think about it in the context also, you know, those coping mechanisms we're always talking about, perfectionism in particular, right? If we want to fit in and we don't want to be found out to be the imposter, we got to look perfect. We've got to please people. And there's nothing more pleasing than somebody who's attractive. God forbid we should be a certain size or not fit into certain shape. Go ahead.
And the other thing I wanted to add is, you know, it's really big with the lie number 10, and it's like you can trust the praise of others. So receiving compliments, and without, you know, we have that need to, you know, justify whatever the person when we receiving compliments for others, because of the way we think we look or we don't look actually. And then, okay, you have beautiful skin. Oh, but I just did whatever. So the person that I am naturally, you know, cannot be beautiful. So we tend to diminish also the compliment. It's like, they just being nice with me, or we're trying to find any kind of, you know, reason to not believe
And particularly because those of us who are
the
people
compliment,
pleasers, right? Then we
actually.
just get really hooked on that. Honey, it's actually been a half an hour. I'm pretty shocked at that. So here's the thing. I know. So Vanessa runs this beautiful program
Oh my
called
God.
Unrestrained Body, and it's closed for now because we're like in it. But Vanessa is an exquisite guide and is, I mean, able to walk you through a gorgeous process. So by all means, how can people reach you? So I see somebody's popped your URL into the chat, but how can people reach you? We're going to have this in the show notes as well, but just
Okay, so yeah, through my website and on my Facebook page, the story business page, a story catalyst.
You know, I have
Vanessa
to tell
Mentor,
you,
the
Vanessa.
story catalyst, I think. I don't remember.
Okay, there it is. Okay, there. Thank you for
just
popping that in, Haley.
Yeah, thank you. So you can send me
Vanessa, here's what I want from you. I mean, I could listen to you tell your stories all day long. And I honestly, I mean, I want you to do that all day, every day. Tell us more and more and more and more and more of your stories. It's absolutely gorgeous to hear you, be with you, hear your wisdom in the world. I love how you're guiding people through this process of unrestrained body as well as the story catalyst. And like I said, watching you shine has just been the most profound joy, really and truly. Thank you so much for being here. Is there anything you needed to say before we sign off?
Thank you, Tanya, for having me. And then one thing I'm saying to people, tell your story. Your story matters. It matters so much, and you need to hear it for yourself. You don't need to, at least share it with your kids, because they need to know your story. And this is how it's anchored also. They anchored in you helping them build that foundation of who you are and where they come from. They need to know that, and you need to.
And I think your story is calling. I'm just writing that. Sounds like your story is calling. Thank you all so much for being here. I'll see you in a couple of months. Okay, bye all. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Bye-bye.